Hi, welcome to Algebra 2 video lessons. I'm Cindy Dole, Mrs. Dole, and some videos will be made by Mr. Yaman this year. We hope this really helps you be able to learn at home. Okay, today we're going to be solving linear equations. There's 4 different types, 2 steps, variables on both sides, using the distributive property, and equations with fractions. Today, or an intro to this video, either today or yesterday, you should have talked about what does it mean to solve, what is a variable, and a couple other questions before we start this video. So if you haven't talked about that, you can pause the video and talk about that now. Our first equation is a 2-step equation. It's 3x plus 1 equals 16. It's going to take us 2 steps to solve this. Now, when you get done, you should have x equals some number. So notice here, the x is by itself. Here, it has the 3 with it, the plus 1. We have to get rid of those. The 3 and the x are together, and so they need to be split up or break up. But they cannot do that with the plus 1 there. So the plus 1 has to go away before they can split up. Kind of like in life, you don't want to be breaking up with people, with other people around. That makes it all awkward. So to get rid of a plus 1, we minus 1. Here, you have to do it to both sides of the equal sign. I call that being fair. Make sure you're fair. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So the 3x comes down, 16 minus 1 is 15. Then the 3 and the x are together, and they're connected by times. Now you divide by 3 to undo the times, and you divide by 3 here because what you do to one side, you have to do to the other side of the equal sign. The 3's cancel, you get x equals 5. Now, it's good practice to say, okay, I solved it. I found out what my x is equal to. Let's check it. Let's plug it back in. 3 times 5 plus 1. Does this equal, I'm sorry, I don't have my USB pen yet. When that happens, or my slate, when that happens, hopefully it'll be, way neater. Okay, so 3 times 5 is 15. Plus 1. And what I do often is right here I put a question mark, because if you're checking something, you don't know if it's true or not. So 3 times 5, using PEMDAS, we do 3 times 5 first, it's 15 plus 1. You add those together, and as we can see, this is an easy one, it's 16. And so what I have my students do is put a check here, or put a smiley face, something to show, yep, I got it correct. And just so you can see, there's a hidden thing. It says we are not finding the solution at this time. But yes, we are. We actually can delete that off the notes. So just disregard that because I really want to go ahead and just solve that. But I'm going to leave that yellow bar there. Okay, next problem. Solve x over 4 minus 5 equals 2. And again, the x and the 4 are together, and they need to be split up, but they can't do it with the minus 5. So as you can see, some of these steps are already done for you. To undo the minus 5, I'm going to use a different color. You have to plus 5. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So you get x over 4 equals 2 plus 5 is 7. And then this is the x is being divided by 4 to get rid of the division. The opposite of division is times. Now, you can use a dot to mean times, or often in algebra we use a parenthesis to mean times. So you can write it this way up here, I can write it this way down here. So then you times by 4, because what you do to one side of the equal side, you have to do to the other. And this should be the 7 right here. That's just 7, and this 7 are the same. And then what happens here is this is a fraction, or it looks like a fraction. And so we're going to make this look like a fraction. And we're going to make this one look like a fraction, because you want to have like things when you multiply. So the 4 and the 4, they either cross cancel, is what we call this, and you make the 4 1 here and the 4 1 here, or since they're the same, sometimes you can just say, oh, they cancel each other out. Same thing happens here, because these two, this is just one way to write it, this is the other way to write it. You don't have to write it both ways. Pick one, pick the way you like, and do it that way. And so x equals 7 times 4 is 28. And again, it's good practice to go ahead and solve or I'm sorry, not solve, we just solved it, is to check it. And you check it by plugging 28 in right here. So we go 28 divided by 4, and we're going to use PEMDAS to do 28 divided by 4 minus 5, does it equal 2? Well, what would you do first, division or subtraction? Hopefully you said we would do, and again we put a question mark, hopefully you said we would do division first. Division in PEMDAS comes before subtraction. So 20 divided by 4 is 7, minus 5. As you can see, it is indeed equal to 2. So you can either do check, it checks out, or you can write, oh yay, put a smiley face, it got the right answer. Okay, example 3. Now we're going to solve 9x minus 13 equals 5x plus 59. Notice what's different about this one is you have an x on the left, you have an x on the right. You have to get the same variables or same terms. I should have probably typed this in instead of trying to write it with my mouse. You have to get the same terms on one side. Follow the two-step equation process that we just did. So we have to get the x's on the same side. So what I say to do, you can't just move the 5x over with the 9x or the 9x over with the 5x, but you could remove, and I always remove the smaller one, because what that does is it keeps the negative off your variable. And right now that's not important, but when we get into inequalities tomorrow or the next day, then it is important. So the 5x and minus 5x cancel. 9x minus 5x is 4x. The minus 13 comes down. Equals 59. So what I'm going to do right now to shorten the video length is I'm going to let your teacher pause the video, and they can go ahead and solve this with you just to keep the video short. Because we're going to do this video in the classroom. If you're watching it online, you would plus 13, add the 13 to 59, you get 72, divide by 4, 72 divided by 4. And I believe your answer would be 18. And then you plug that back in and see if that works. Okay, using the distributive property. And again, every time we're solving for x, we're trying to get the x by itself. So you distribute first. Here's your steps. You distribute first, and then you follow the variables on both sides method if necessary. So here's your process. Let's distribute. We're going to distribute the 4 because 4 is out front, and this means times if there's nothing here. And this means times, and so we're going to distribute the negative 2, because again this is times. So negative 2 times 9, I kind of missed, but you get the idea, and negative 2 times negative 8x. Let me go ahead and erase that line, so, because if you're like me, sometimes you get confused if it doesn't look right. You're like, what was that? Okay, so negative 2 times 9, and negative 2 times negative 8x. This right here is like a negative. It's a minus sign or a negative. Subtraction and negative are really the same thing. So we get negative 2 times 9 is negative 18. And then a negative 2 times a negative 8 is a positive 16x. And you can see it right down here. If you peeked ahead, then you would have saw the answer. Now you just follow the example in the last one. Let's go ahead and practice that one more time. So we're going to move the smallest variable, or the smallest coefficient, on the x. Coefficient is the number with the x, just to do some vocabulary practice. So we're going to remove, actually, the 4x by minusing the 4x. So both sides of the equal sign. Okay, so now we get negative 12 equals negative 18 plus 12x. Okay, so tell your teacher right now, or try it on your own if you're doing this at home. Go ahead and see if you can say what the next step is. What is the next step in this problem? And hopefully you said plus 18. Because the 12 and the x are together. They need to break up. But the 18 can't be there during this breakup. Okay, so 6 equals 12x. Now, it's often just, or it's easy to say, oh, well, the answer is 2. Well, think about it. 12 times 2 is that 6? No, it's not. So, you have to get the 12 times x. You got to get the x by itself, so we got to get rid of that 12 being times. You divide. And 6 divided by 12 is not 2, but it's 1/2. So you get 1/2 equals x. And the 12's right here cancel. And then you should plug it back in with our our new graphing calculators. I'm actually going to undo that last little because that doesn't look very good. Okay, I'll just leave it. It's right there. You can see it. X equals 1/2. And with our new calculators, it's easy to take a fraction like 1/2 and plug it back in right here. 1/2 minus 3, get your answer times by 4. Over here, take 8 times 1/2. Subtract that from 9 times by negative 2. And this side should equal that side. Okay, next example. Oh, no fractions, but what I say are fractions are friends. Decimals are dangerous because decimals, you round them a lot. And really with our new graphing calculators, fractions really aren't that bad. I mean, they do the fraction pretty much for you. Now, they won't solve a fraction for you, but they will, when you go to check it, it will put in the fraction for you. Okay, so here's the steps. Hey, you can solve problems with fractions several ways, but we will get rid of, right here, that I believe you have to fill in this blank in your notes. Get rid of the denominator first. How? You multiply both sides by the common denominator, and then you follow the two-step process. So, you look at 10 and 5, say what's the common denominator? Well, what did they both go into? Well, the answer is 10. You can see it right here. 10. It's not 5 because 5 will go into 5, but 10 won't go into 5. But then if you say 10, well, 5 will go into 10, and 10 will go into 10. Excuse me. Okay, so this is a fraction. Oh, actually, we're just going to leave it 10 right now. We're going to turn it to a fraction in a second. So what you need to do is you actually have to distribute this 10 to both of these right here. So I'm going to go 10 times 1/5 and you should be writing this in your notes, minus 10 times x over 10 equals 2/5 times 10. Okay. Now to make the 10 in fraction form, because this is in fraction form, we're going to do 10 over 1 to make it in fraction form. And this is a fraction, so let's put this one in fraction form. And then right here, this one's a fraction, so let's put this one in fraction form. So right here, what's going to happen is you can cross cancel diagonally. And you go 5 goes into 5 one time, and 5 goes into 10 two times. And here, because of the same number, you can either put a 1 up here and a 1 down here, or since they're the same number, you can just cancel them both out. Here, same thing as the first one. 5 goes into 5 once, that changes to a 1. 5 goes into 10 two times, that changes to a 2. So here, notice that 1s are all on the bottom, so we can just disregard it, because whenever you get like 5 over 1, it's just 5. 10 over 1 is just 10, etc. You can disregard that 1. So 2 times 1, right here, is 2. Minus, right here you're just left with the x. The 10's canceled. Equals, I think I forgot to, right here, and you probably, maybe you caught this, I didn't even catch it. There's a negative. See that negative? Now, it might confuse you because I put the negative on the 2, but when you have a negative fraction like negative 2/5, you can put negative 2 over 5, you can put 2 over negative 5, or you can just put the negative out front. So 2 minus x equals negative 4. Negative 2 times 2. Okay, let's go ahead and extend the page. Okay? So now here it might be confusing because it looks like the 2 is being subtracted, but really the x is being subtracted. The 2 is a positive 2 because there's nothing out here in front of it. So to get rid of that 2, because you remember we're trying to get the x by itself, do a negative 2 or a minus 2 to both sides of the equal sign. So this cancels. You get negative x equals negative 6. And then most algebra teachers teach to put a 1 right here, because if there's no number, there's a 1. And then you can just divide both sides by negative 1, because remember, this is times. To undo times, we divide. Okay, so cancel this, x equals negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, now another way of doing it is sometimes I just like to use logic. So I'm going to actually try typing. This is kind of big. Negative x equals negative 6. And then if you use logic, you say, okay, if a negative x equals a negative 6, then a positive x will equal, guess what? A positive 6. And that's just using logic. And some people are like, oh my gosh, that's so great. I've never heard that before. But some people are like, no, that does not work for me. I would like to just stick with the algebraic method. Okay, and again, if you want to check it, x equals 6, put it in up here for the x. You get 1/5. You can do this on your calculator. Let's go back to the original equation. Take 1/5 minus 6/10 and see if you get negative 2/5. And indeed you should. Okay, that's the end of day 1 solving linear equations. This is Dole signing off. Bye.